Hello everyone, my name is Shunji and this is the code walkthrough video for my final project, course 699. My final project is Smart Goal, a goal tracking and organizing web application. I built this application by using Angular and ASP.NET. I'm also use MS SQL to save data. And in this video, I'm gonna demonstrate the code and introduce the functionality of each component and how they interact with each other. And hopefully, after this introduction, you will understand my idea. Let's start. As we can see, this is the very common ASP.NET project, and it's organized by folders. I give it a proper name so that we can understand the functionality. First will be a client app. That will be our complete front-end application. This is actually a standalone Angular project. Located inside, you can actually run it by Angular. And controller will be ASP.NET controller framework so that you can define your API. And mapping will be we don't want to expose our object directly, so we create a mapping between the model and the JSON object that exposed to external applications. In this case, it's a web application. Maybe in the future, it's a Android phone application or iOS application, so that we can create a different kind of mapping. And migration will be the one that we use to update the database whenever we change anything to the model. And model will be the core objects that inside our application that will represent the core business units in our application. In this case, you can see here's a user, task, goal, and the folder. Okay. Page, we don't use it because we're using this Angular. This one is empty. Persistence, there will be repository for interaction between objects and the database. And the startup and the program, these are regular stuff for the ASP.NET start point. Okay, let me start to introduce from the model. Okay, we already know that this is the core objects. For instance, Go CSS, you can open it. If you see there, we can define like subjects. We will ask whether it's required or string length, how long it can be, and these values can be used to define the how it is saved in the database, right? So this means that this object cannot be null. It must have some value when you try to save it. And yeah, that's it. And here, the relationship will be like each folder can have a list of goal, and each goal can have a list of tasks, so that we can maintain this parent-child relationship. And this user actually doesn't use, in this case, where we outsource our user registration and login to auth0. I'm not gonna introduce that later. That's pager. Okay, persistence. Next one will be yes, persistence. In this case, I'm gonna create a few repository, and each object will have a repository. We will define how do we create goal, create folder, or something like create this object into the database. How do we remove it from the database, right? For example, I'm gonna use this Go repository as example here. You can use it to get a goal. You can use to add and remove. Currently, I didn't implement the update functionality. Yes, and these are the interface, and then we can define how do we try to define this repository class for each individual class, so that we can have a better control of it. Yeah, each of them have it, and the reason we need this is also that we need to have an dependency injection, and so that we can inject to the ASP.NET application. At the beginning start folder, you can see here, whenever we create those interfaces, we can use this configure services, and we add scope, and we pass our interface and the implementation to here to this application as in dependency injection, so that we can use this repository in our application. And the next will be the migrations. This one will be very interesting because whenever our application is sort of like from the object to the database direction. So when we try to change something, usually we just change the models. For example, I want to add something in the folder, I add this one, this semester, user email. But in the initial version, we don't have this user email in the database. We don't have this column at all. Then we create a migration here by using a few commands, and it will automatically generate the migration code. For instance, where is it? Add email to the task and add email to the folder. Yeah, here. You can see here it will be add a column for us. And after this migration, you can call the command line and it will update our database. So basically, this migration is like the process how we update the database. And the mapping is also very important. So we don't want to expose our core object directly to the external world. So we create a mapping. For the external world, we're using this folder resource or user resource or Go resource for the demonstration purpose. We will create a JSON file by this and not directly by folder user Go. We don't want to do that. We just use these resources, but we need to map it first. Right, we map it first so that we can expose it. And in the same time, we also need a mapping between the save to the Go. Like whenever we received some file from external to ask us to save this object, and the thing we received, we will be using this save something something resource, and we will need a mapping between the saved object to the core object. We also need a mapping. Okay, so it's like a two-way mapping. Next one will be the controller. This one is very easy to introduction, that we create our API calls from here. For instance, and each folder, each file, we will have root routes. For instance, this one Go controller, we will define the whole, the root route will be API goals, and then we define what do we want to do. I want a HTTP GET, and we pass the ID here. Then we will call this function. We will try to parse the value into integer, and then we use this Go repository to get the ID here, right? And also we can use create a Go, and we see here, that's the thing I introduced. The thing we received is a resource, a save Go resource, and we map it to the core object, to the real Go object, so that we can save it to the Go repository. Okay, and so it's update Go. This is actually doesn't implement, and delete Go. So the other controller are similar functionalities. They basically define the endpoint of our APIs, like get, update, delete, create, and then we define how do we process each HTTP call. The next one will be the resources. Oh yeah, the resource files are located in here in controller. That the resource I mentioned before, the save Go resource and the Go resource are inside the controller resource folder. Okay, and the last one, I'm going to introduce this client app. This is the most important one. This is a completely front-end application, and everything located into the source. You can see here, source app, and there are a lot of things here. And if you know about the Angular, that Angular is running by components. So each thing you want to represent it as a component, Angular component. And for instance, for the Go, I have a Go container and a Go entry. So what is goal entry? Each goal will be represented by a goal entry, and the goal container will be doing things like load goals and create a lot of goal entries for each goal that we get from the data server. And so is the so is a task container and task entry. And also I have priority matrix component. Actually, I don't use it. This one is outsourced, right? I have one application running, for instance. This object, the whole part of here is a component, and this is called a goal component, and this area will be a goal container. You can see here the goal container not only have a goal entry, it also have this part that you can create a goal object here. It's also called the saving HTTP service inside the goal container. So is a task. This is also a container. Actually, we don't call it a container. It's also a component for the sidebar command. Okay, you can see here sidebar, priority matrix, homepage. Homepage will be the complete homepage here. The whole page will be the home page. I'm just make sure it's organized by the routes, right? I'm adding this home page is because we need the right functionality of Angular so that we can control the user's access. The Angular routes will be controlled. Let me see here. No, here. Yeah, you can see here. I can define the routes here. If I type the home, it will be go to the home page. If login, it'll get to the login page, right? So this will be the one we are using to for the web application route. Let me see what else. Yeah, the interfaces, the Auth0 user registration and authentication. What I'm using is the called use auth service, and this one is what I created here. We define the login, logout is authenticated, and get authenticated user, and these will be injected into by the apt module here. Let's see where it is. Yeah, we first need to install the Auth0 module, and we call it from the import method, and we define these domain and client ID. These are applications I created on their website. I need to create a Auth0 web application first so that I can use this authentication service. And then I imported as an auth module, and I imported as a service inside the user auth service. And this service are similar to all other services, and this is ASP HTTP service will be my internal service for the object saving, delete, and getting activity from our own server. And you can see here HTTP service. Yeah, you can see for each object we will have one. Get folders, create folders, get goals, create goals, and we are going to use this client get, post, as you can know the HTTP call get, post, or delete. Yeah, this kind of thing. And this ASP HTTP will be completely used for that purpose. And the other thing I want to introduce is goal and task interaction. And as you know that in our application that we have this interaction between this goal and task. So see here, if I click it, will be automatically as a 100. This one will be achieved by this goal and task interaction, that we will create an observable object so that both listen to each other as activities. Yeah, basically that's the introduction. Thank you very much.